traders, Adam Harris here. So I'm just going to take you through what I'm looking at for this coming week. This is now the third week of November, so you can see Christmas is just around the corner. Mariah Carey is making her entrance, and what I want to do is have a look at any sort of major news coming out this week. There's very little actually to be concerned over. We've got out of the US, we've got core retail sales here as well, and really, I guess everybody, the talk of the town right now is inflation. So just having a look at these, looking at the stats, the only thing that really matters is actual, and there isn't really a trend at this point in time. So there's not necessarily an trend or showing anything that hints towards, at this point in time at least, inflation impacting customer sales or retail sales at this time. Okay, not a lot, or at least nothing that would predict that this week necessarily there's anything that's going to really, that the market's on edge. Okay, so neither that in the US retail sales or core retail sales as well. It's all, you know, this isn't necessarily anything we haven't seen over the last couple of years, especially on the tail end, where kind of conditions for Americans, for example, were really bad on the tail end of that Trump presidency, sort of leading up to the election, really, really bad, coronavirus, everything out of control. Now kind of things starting to come back into, or back under control, at least for the US. So I'm only talking about that because the US economy obviously will impact the rest of us. Then having a look at the out of the UK here as well. Again, just highlighting here that this could be an indicator perhaps of inflation on the rise out of the UK, but really not, we're not anywhere that we haven't been, in recent years at this point in time. So nothing is, the concern is that things are spiraling out of control, or they will soon. And I'm just trying to highlight that even if we look here at Canada as well, not so much at this point in time. It just means that, you know, this week, that is potentially something that we can remove from concerns where we think it's going to potentially impact our intraday trading or end of day trading. All right, so I think that being said, let's go across and have a look at the chart. Actually, just before I kick off, a quick request. If you're okay with us, please, on my channel, on my community section over here, I have created a couple of polls. There's actually one a little bit lower down, just talking about kind of what kind of posts you want, what kind of content you want. What I'd like to do is produce content that is actually required or needed or wanted, as opposed to kind of bombarding people with stuff. If you get a chance, if you could navigate your way over to the community tab and give me some data here as well. This is also just trader data. It's interesting to know how other traders are, what timeframes they're trading, and I'll add polls like this in future. But if you could do me a kindness and head over to the community tab and just give me some feedback on those items, that would be great. Thank you very much. So having a look at, on the charts, looking at the volatility, really just the fact that it's bobbing around, there's no significant changes, it's still relatively weak. If you look at the moving averages on the weekly chart here, we're going roughly sideways, which implies that we're pretty much range bound at this point in time. And so there have been moves, there just haven't been these long sustained trends on the daily charts, for example, with regards to currencies, or at least not nice enough for swing traders to get into, but there have been there are trends in the market. So I'm going to probably cool it on checking the volatility index for now, because I don't really feel that it's adding that much value. And I think that every minute counts in these weekly videos, because, you know, a 25-minute video versus a 35-minute video makes a difference. So having a look at the US dollar index here, we successfully broke through that 94.50 level. We've continued up to 95. I'm expecting it. I really think that 96 isn't that far away. We had a really solid breakout on the weekly, some nice resistance consolidation, a pullback and a breakout. So I really don't think it's that ridiculous to see us heading towards 96 this week. They might, for example, you know, there isn't any major news. There might be some pullbacks, and any pullbacks would provide, especially on the 4-hour time frame for day traders, would provide some buying opportunities. So I would be positioning myself. And at some point, yes, of course, I think it's feasible we could come back and test this for support, you know, in this sense, but that could be a couple of weeks away, or we could come back and test 95 and continue onwards. But for now, my preferred direction is going to be a stronger dollar. Euro dollar, same thing again. I'm expecting this to continue down. 1.14 isn't that far away. Some consolidations or minor pullbacks. Not really expecting a bigger pullback for a few weeks. I'd be surprised if we immediately went back. That would be a strong rejection of the lows. That weekly closing near the lows, looking nice and bearish. That monthly also looking quite good. 1400, not that far away. So therefore, I think that's the most feasible, the path of least resistance, and that's really what I'll be looking for. Interesting to see sterling, which I was kind of claiming was really quite weak. That candle there is showing a little bit of depletion, a little bit of exhaustion. A little bit of support, kind of a reaction to that support level, closing back over that level. So this is looking a little bit stronger than I was anticipating, but it may just simply be coming back, or it might just continue to the downside there. We'll see if it can get back over this level and hold. So early part of the week, we'll be seeing how it reacts to these previous lows here to see if that structure's able to hold. And because it's generally been heading lower, I wouldn't, at this time, I'm not really sure why I would expect it to hold where it is. I would expect it to continue down, supporting a stronger US dollar. Then having a look at Aussie dollar, US dollar, we've continued to move down. We've come into a daily level. So let me just mark this over here. We've come into a bit of a daily level, support resistance. We have a bit of an uptrend currently, at least high lows, high highs, and largely high lows, high highs on the monthly. So there is a fair amount of bullishness with the Australian dollar. It is relatively strong. So overall, I said is if that US dollar knows where it wants to go, nothing is really going to be able to stay out of it, or nothing's going to be able to stop it. So then I would expect it to go low. So this makes trading Aussie dollar and the Kiwi dollar a little bit trickier because it looks like they might be well matched. They've got their own independent strength, and we'll have to see. Certainly, if we had to break lower, then I'd start to become more and more bearish on this because right now they're holding the line. If they break the line, then obviously that waiting, there's going to be a tipping point, and then it's really going to be worthwhile to short some of those currencies. But they lower on my list at this point in time. Dollar yen, encountering a little bit of resistance here at that 114 level. Certainly 114.50 is a relatively decent level, but let's call 114. So I'll add that in later. I'm expecting this, if it can break through here, to get back over the line there. So there's some strong resistance here now. Japanese, Bank of Japan tend to do their own thing, and so this could hold. A little bit of caution. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, I would think dollar strength is going to push it through on that level. Same thing here. Dollar Swiss here, we did actually produce a high, low, high, high. I was talking last week about how this was nice and quite nice and bearish. It was kind of push a little bit lower, and then I was talking about how there was some conflicting information. And I think based off that, that was relatively fair to say that. But now, of course, in line with everything in the last week, it's updated. There does appear to be some clarity. Pretty much everything is now on the side of a stronger dollar, and so I would expect dollar Swiss to climb, dollar CAD as well, coming into a little bit of daily resistance market structure over here, but I do expect it to ultimately break through. It might come down to these lower highs early part of the week and then ultimately push through by the end of the week. Let's see how that goes. I'm just going to carry on with these being my currencies of interest. I went through all of the others, and for the most part, they're pretty much the same. The dollar yen pairs did, as discussed last week, continue a little bit low. We're starting to break through these previous market structure highs on the weekly, and any kind of pullbacks could still provide some shorting opportunities, but they're also in an area where if they're ultimately going to continue to the upside, this would be a really good spot for them to turn around and recover. We haven't really, we're still an inside candle within the previous month, which is overall still bullish. So until we break these lows of 128, we don't really see a longer term bearish side. So this is just going to be, I would be a little bit more cautious on this. I want to see if it's going to hold above this or break below this. Excuse me, but if it maintains its forward downtrend, it's going to head down towards 128.60. And here also, EURUSD coming in, you can see quite a bit of weakness coming here. It is testing this level of support. I would say a break below that. A solid bearish candle would give me some good day trading opportunities down to 1.05. Alternatively, a solid breakout above this up to 106.25 or anything above that, I would become bullish. EuroCAD going through a bit of a consolidation. As I was saying before, this consolidation could lead to the bottom. If we do, again, I'm looking for a nice solid close below the 143 level to start shorting it. And I'm leaning a little bit more towards doing a nice solid breakout above that and then trading it up to 1.46. It's still in that consolidation. Who knows when it'll break out of it? There's no clear sign just yet. EURUSD, look at that weekly candle, a little bit of weakness at that point coming in to these old highs here and rejecting those. But it has effectively broken to the upside here. There's more of a bullish sentiment currently with a bit of a retracement. And so actually the early part of this week, right off that 1.56 level, I am going to be looking for support off those levels to see if there is now some buying opportunities to the upside. And again, I'll keep an eye on this level up here for these bits of exhaustion. It'll start to gain more momentum once it breaks above these highs, if that is the case. Again, if it just falls right back below that and starts to head all the way down, then yeah, this is going to start to get a little bit messy. But right now, it's certainly attempting. It is its first attempt to get back above that. It might ultimately want to do a sort of a double bottom or another rejection of this level before longer term trends change. Well, let's have a look and see how that is. Again, play it as it lies, which just means kind of deal with it in real time as it's unfolding. Pound yen, again, similarly, has also broken down into, it's coming into the previous market structures, started to slow right down, buyers coming back in. So we are still effectively, I would say, range bound on that monthly time frame. On the weekly, we're now in the bottom lower half of this overall range. And so, yes, again, there is an equal opportunity for this, and similarly, I would say with Euro Yen, it could well continue down to the bottom here, and so there could be some good day trading opportunities. On one of the polls that I was asking, I really want to get a sense of how many people, because I now do almost no swing trading on currencies on the daily. I'm really finding that for the most part, they just are not really following through on that. Whereas I could think 10 years ago, it was just a phenomenal way to trade the currency markets. I'm finding swing trading is a little bit more reliable on indices, on stocks, on some of the commodities, and even cryptos, just really not so much on currencies. I'd really like to know your thoughts, and I think a couple of those polls in the area or in the comment section below. Just let me know what your thoughts on that are. So yeah, here's my point, is that yes, it's coming to previous market structures and it may be able to recover from this. There's a little bit of a slowdown here, but for the most part, I'm sort of 55 leaning towards it continuing to the downside before reversing, and we'll see how that goes. Here we've now produced higher lows, equal highs here. This is now attempting to climb a little bit higher, so break on pound Aussie above these previous highs here would be for me a good buying opportunity. It is attempting to recover, to hold at this level and climb a little bit higher. It is still producing higher lows off this, and again, if we just start to immediately disregard, then break down below these lows, then I start to become more bearish. So really, what I'm looking at here is some of these are going to involve a little bit of wait and see, or at least just short-term trading right up to those recent levels and then seeing how they respond. Sometimes they're a lot more clear about what they want. Again, here you can see that move down, pull back into the previous midpoint of the previous week's range behavior. And you can see it sort of fading a little bit here. So there could be some good shorting opportunities here on the daily, but then when you look at it on the weekly, bit of bullishness coming in off these levels here and potentially it wanting to climb up above that, and largely just very range bound on the monthly. So it could, of course, be anything. I was saying last week I was really nice and bearish on this. And again, I still kind of am. It is in an area where there could potentially be an end-of-day setup. I am noticing just here that RSI is starting to become a little bit more bullish. So again, here I'm going to be watching for big moves above 91.75. If that is the case, I start to become more and more bullish up to 93.75. That means we break the high of last week's candle. Subsequently, if we don't, or alternatively, if we don't, we start to break the low of that, I maintain that bearish stance. Aussie yen also showing some good signs of slowing down here. Okay, so this is very similar with a couple of these pairs, pound yen, euro yen, all of them except euro yen actually diving quite down, but Aussie yen, we'll have a look at CAD yen as well, just to see if that's similar. CAD yen as well, also starting to put the brakes on here. So it does look as though it really wants to attempt to continue. And so I'll be a little bit more cautious on that, at least shorter term, looking for any pullbacks back into previous highs here on those 4-hour structures. Now, CAD yen looking quite interesting to me. We've, a bit of a rejection off here, then a rejection off that, and then a little bit of a failure here as well to move down. So really price is stuck between kind of this little level here at 90.50, let's call it 90.50, and 91.25. That's really what it wants to do. I would say if it breaks above that, I could start to look for more buys to the upside, or if it continues down, breaks below this, looking for shorts down to 90 a little bit further. So CAD yen, as I said, this is now, so now what I'm doing, which is different, which I don't often do, is I'm now talking more about what over the next 5 days, what my more intraday approach is going to be on these levels. And it's more granular because I'm really looking just at smaller distances. Yeah, so let's have a look at gold. So gold, I'm still bullish on that. Looks really good. 1900 is the next major level that it's going for. 1830 has been a bit of an issue in the past. There's going to be a little bit of a reaction where it is right now. Let's call it 1870. And principally, aside from any kind of pullbacks, I'm going to really be still maintain my bullish stance, looking for buys on the way up to 1900 at this point in time. Silver as well, same thing. It's broken nicely. I'm happy with this. It's above 25. It's still looking relatively bullish. 25.75 and 25 and 26 is not that far away, and therefore I'm looking for that. Any kind of pullbacks would be nice, but again, I wouldn't expect a really big pullback to retest this anytime soon. Looking for this to move ahead rather than kind of fail. So let's have a look at that. Let's go on to crude oil. So West Texas producing a bit of a, well, potentially a higher low. Actually, we haven't produced a swing low there. You can see here it's battling a bit. So I was looking to see if we did break a little bit low. We did, and then we immediately recovered. So again, we've still got lots of buyers in the market. There's no doubt that at least last week, potentially there are still plenty of buyers, bulls in the market looking who want this to continue up. 85 is going to present some difficulty for now. And we haven't produced much of a bullish reaction at this point in time. And so it's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky because really only if we break below this low would I expect it to head a little bit, pick up a bit more bearish momentum. And until we break above 85, would I expect it to then start to drop the sellers that are in this area and start to shift more bullish. So in other words, I don't really anticipate any clean, well-behaved price action, or at least not as good as it can be until we get over 85 or until we get below that for buyers or sellers. Remember, at this point, I'm talking more from a perspective of trading, and therefore whether we're a buyer or a seller, what I'm really looking for is decent price action on the lower timeframes, and when it's like this, it can be a little bit choppy and range bound. Okay, so Brent crude as well, ping-ponging between these ultimate levels. It is range bound at this point. How do we know that? Well, we broke the low here. We've broken the low here, so we went into a downtrend, broke that, into an uptrend, and we've pulled right back down into these lows here. So we're just not really clear this here. Are we going to get a higher low and a higher high? Is it going to break out, or is it going to ping pong all over the place? And so again, looking at that last week candle, it's showing that it has effectively got plenty of buyers below here and plenty of sellers above here, and the battle is being fought in the middle. Moving on to the global indices. All right, so I'm mentioning this one because, again, this is a swing trading setup. So looking at the Dow, let's pull back on the daily, bullish candle here, all of this off these old highs here. It's interesting because what I would usually have or historically have expected is a break and a continuation up to 36.5. However, I would say over the last couple of years, what could happen is an outside candle, outside bearish candle, we break the high Monday, we finish low, we come back down, or we then come down a couple of days, come back down into these highs, and then produce a bullish candle, then perhaps climb up there. Because we have an indecision candle on the daily, we're showing a bit of exhaustion there. I'm really going to see this as a potential level of resistance at this point in time, and I'm not necessarily expecting a clean move up to the top. As I said last week, we really did need to let off some of that steam, and it could be a case of where we still need to let off a little bit more. But in isolation, this is a buyer setup. So what I could end up doing potentially is reduce, 0.25% on my risk stop loss below the low of here, my entry above the high of this, and see if we get a follow through, take some profit at 1-to-1, and then see how we go in terms of trading that. But that weekly candle, I'm just highlighting that often we get one in the middle and then it continues up. Could have been letting off some steam, so I don't want to kind of just turn bearish all of a sudden, just admitting that there could be some potential little bit more caution on that. But that is the setup there. Then when I go across to the S&P, we have a swing already forming. This is also a bullish setup. So in that case, if I did, it's not really optimal in terms of position sizing. I'm entry above the high there with my stop loss below the low. I would almost certainly, and you can see there's some clear resistance here at 4.7. And so we've also got an indecision candle here, which could, similar to a hanging man, could indicate a potential for a weekly correction to the downside. So I'll be watching the low of last week's candle to see if we break the low of that. That then indicates, especially if we break it first, could indicate then a stronger move down to 4.525. So I'm going to mention that there is some medium risk on this because of those particular signals. We're getting a bit of a hint on the weekly that it could be pausing before surging higher, because the daily looks like it wants to continue up higher, or it could be breaking the low. And so therefore, I think the break of the weekly low is going to be quite significant, or how Monday's behavior. So do we just disregard this bullish candle, or does Tuesday produce a nice bullish follow through on that? So that's just highlighting that risk, which isn't always the case. Sometimes you tend to get a nice little, you don't get this kind of potential exhaustion on the weekly, but you get the same bullish setup. And so this also looking relatively nice and bullish. So far, all of this certainly looks like it wants to at least run back up into these old highs, but you can see it just ran out of steam at those levels. Mini Russell, even the Mini Russell playing is joined the team, kind of we've broken out through these highs here. That looks good. I'm relatively happy with that. That's a consolidation and a breakout. I need to see where it closes though. Okay, so far, I guess my initial expectation is to see this potentially continue to the upside. I might just disregard this. It's going to be interesting. And so it's not to say don't trade it at all. It's just that there are clues that there is some risk, and therefore I can reduce my risk on any exposure. And just knowing that going forwards. Okay, FTSE, what I have to mention, I mean, look at the FTSE, it's gone up here, it's broken through. It didn't close through currently, it hasn't done that, it's closed below this level as well. These are sort of signs of very little effort, or at least energy, momentum, broke through and then pulled back. But it is worth mentioning that is where we are. We're kind of trying to get past these old highs, and we succeeded doing that where we haven't done that for a while. So we just haven't closed any higher just yet. So, okay, I'm going to mention that because I just think there's a bit of a gold star for the FTSE, which is always dragging its heels. Look at this as well, kind of DAX closing, looking really good above that level. It's closed over that, pushing a little bit higher, edging it. You could just see it's kind of, the people are kind of at all-time highs are usually looking to kind of push back a bit, and it's just trying to stay above that little bullish candle here, pushing a little bit higher. So kind of look at the FTSE, look at that, look at the Mini Russell. There's still buyers in the game. Okay, this is really nice and clean price action here. Euro stocks as well, pushing on higher. That looks beautiful. That's really nice and healthy, and this is very nice and healthy. Okay, so all of this again, interesting. So the US is doing, it's kind of playing its bit of a game, but the rest of the market still seem to be relatively bullish. Let's have a look. So Nikkei out of Japan, bullish rejection of the lows, is still range bound. It looks like it's just going to attempt to go up a little bit higher. It's not really participating the same way the others are. Okay, out of Australia, so nice little indecision here and a nice little so far bullish month. We'll have to see how that does go, but so far last week, the real initial battle, there's no doubt, a bit of an initial battle where it is now. Let's call it 7. No, I'm going to call it up here at 7,470. I want to see this break up above that before it can return back up to those old highs. So, not so sure about that. Okay, moving on to the equities of interest. All right, so we had a bit of a swing low here. We haven't really pushed too much high. It's back into this last week. I spoke about it. Didn't break the low, did we? Let's just have a look at this one. So the low of that, 422. What's the low of this? 421. Okay, so we did. We broke just below that. Excuse me. So this week, what I want to see, we've got an uptrend on the daily. I want to see it break up above and go back up towards 450. Shouldn't be breaking below the low. If it does break below this this week, then yep, then there's a different kind of a story happening here, because it's really trying to test these market structures here and stay above that. American Express, actually really good. I love the fact that it did ultimately, it gapped up actually and managed to break up above this level. So it's what it's trying to do here, or at least what it's battling with, is back up at these old highs. It's disregarding the rejection there, and the month isn't over. As I said, that, you know, it's not impossible. It could finish as a strong red candle. It really didn't consolidate for very long here, so it's still juiced up. Let's see if it can keep going. ARC Innovation, so far looking okay. It's not super impressive. I really want to see them break up above 125.70. I said that last week. There's no doubt there's a strong battle that's occurring there. And so I'm going to need to see some commitment, some effort being made here to see you break through this resistance and back up to 150. So not super in love with it at the moment. Berkshire Hathaway, without a doubt, look at that. Very clear battling with that level, not able to get to 300. Overall, slightly higher lows, slightly higher highs. It's creeping up towards that. It needs a nice little breakup, bit of a consolidation on the monthly here. So the potential for it to finish up is it's there, but yeah, that's a big rejection on that day. Look at that, just a big failure on that. So it's a struggle right now. It's a tipping point where it's like 52% buyers and 48% sellers. So it's really struggling a bit there. BP. This looking pretty normal at this point. It's still trying to determine if it could stay above this level, the market structure, the old highs. Still a monthly trend on the monthly. They're still trending upwards. Still technically an uptrend on the weekly, but it's produced a lower high on the daily. So this week I'll be looking for breaks below this low first, or breaks above this high to see a continuation to the upside. Coca-Cola, look at it, right at the top there, and it's, you know, it's not too overextended. It's still got that potential to break through. But we're going to have to see a little bit of a consolidation here. In fact, I would argue that this is a little bit more of a bullish setup at this point. But there's a real battle going on right now. So I'd like to see this week, see if we can break and close over the line. The monthly is saying that it's feasible to do that, but we got to get through that level. Okay. Yeah. Okay, ExxonMobil, which was always similar. I think I should just move that up to BP so I could just see these two together. ExxonMobil still uptrend, managing to continue push on, but not a lot of love happening beyond this point. It's kind of 65 seems to be its limit at this time, so not expecting too much there. There'd have to be something phenomenal across the markets to really boost them across the board, to lift even the slightly weaker ones that are battling at the moment. This is also similar. So Coca-Cola we've had a look at. Sorry, let's just go on. General Motors, look at that really strong surge. All of that being nice and bullish, back up to where it is now, which is 60. Let's call it 65. Let's round it up. Just say 65 is its challenge. But I think that that's feasible. It's coming back into these highs here. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to mark that. So we're going to see how that's going to go. There might be a bit of an initial pullback this week, a reaction off that level. So there's probably potential some short sellers up there. Otherwise, let's see if we can continue through with that. Morgan Chase really struggling here. The weekly says a lot of it. So I'll tell you what. So it's really in the price action language here. So first of all, it's not really creating new highs. It's been producing lower highs, but here's where it gets interesting. Each subsequent candle is closing lower. So in other words, every week the sellers are just pushing it and closing low, not just testing new lows, but continually pushing lows. Now, it hasn't really come into these old market structure highs just yet. I mean, if you want to really be sensitive, yes, it has all. But no, I would say it's got that potential, maybe just to test a little bit lower. So what I'm looking for here, I need to see is a bullish, nice bullish green candle finish to the upside. It's got to close to the upside for me to feel that it's going to be able to work its way through all of this. Strong bearish divergence on this so far on the daily, which just hints that the daily could could still come down a little bit further. So not seeing anything just down. You see a nice little bullish candle on that. Okay, Morgan Stanley, range bound. You can see here it's got some support in these areas here. It's trying to stay above 100. I think I said this last week. That monthly just now consolidating. So off this, not expecting any change unless I think I'm leaning more towards this going continuing its consolidation or breaking to the downside more so than I am kind of expecting to go to the upside. Right. Apple having come back on their weekly, pushing a little bit higher, and that's just halted now. So that is struggling at, I'm going to say 150. Call it as a nice round number, 150 in this area, although it's obviously a little bit higher than that right now. It is producing a high low on the daily. It's potentially producing a bit of a triangular breakout here. That monthly looks good. I'm happy with that monthly. I would have preferred it to close near the highs. That's really what it's battling with at this point in time. So this week, I'd need to see it hold at these market structures, push up to these old highs. If it just falls back down through here, it's going to head back down towards those lows there. So that's what I'm looking for in more detail. Okay, so again, now NVIDIA. NVIDIA needs a correction. No doubt to my mind. Look at that weekly indecision candle. That's exhaustion at that point. So 300 is going to be a bit of a challenge for it. Yield 325. No. Let's go with, yeah, 300, 325. That bullish monthly candle. That's interesting, just showing a bit of exhaustion. So the monthly kind of implies that it's still got some juice, so maybe push up to 350. That weekly is saying that it's had a bit of another move, might be pausing at this point in time. The daily might want to come down a bit and perhaps recover and climb. So really nice would be to see a comeback into, or at least a pullback into 230 or 250 before continuing to the upside. So just interesting, that actually is not necessarily saying it could just be pausing before continuing higher, but what it is also saying is right now it's taking a rest. It's taking not a rest. Okay, so PayPal, I spoke last week about if it broke, if it could hold above this level, break through, and if it broke through, like what the hell's going on. Now, generally, if there's a market wave, so it's a rising tide lifts all boats, and obviously, conversely, if the whole market is taking strain, it would show up here. So it isn't always just about management, but certainly there is something going on at PayPal. Keep in mind that I'm a technical trader, and I just don't have time to go and check out the fundamentals, but I'm almost certain there's something going on there. And I say management because I would, if we're taking Warren Buffett's approach, I would expect that good management could right the ship. So I'm very curious to know what's going on there. I will have a look at it this week, so next week I'll kind of see what's going on. But yeah, that's not a great sign. Let's come back into these alt structures. There is actually now on the table that PayPal can head down towards 175. So interesting if it can. May do some pullbacks back into this level. It's now out, potentially outside this range. Maybe it can't get back over that line. We'll have to see how it goes, but something has to be done. Okay, Tesla. Tesla obviously now, as we said, needing a bit of a correction. It is interesting to me, though, that monthly candle, that 1-2 being that level, that barrier for it. If we close as a fully bearish candle, especially if we close at the lows, then we're going to see a bigger correction. Well, then I'm pretty sure we're going to see a bigger correction, at least down into these old highs, or perhaps back down into 800, or even back down into these old lows. Now, it's too early to say that. So this week, what I'm looking for is, can it hold? Can it take another run at 1-2? Or do we break the low of this weekly? So that's really going to be the first clear. If we break the low of that before we break the high, and then it makes more sense if we're going to head back down towards these old lows. So there could even be an attempt to go up and then another drop lower. It is, it's gone parabolic anyway, but I do like the fact that it had a good consolidation here, a really big candle. The month isn't over yet. We're just past that halfway point. Actually, we're technically going to be halfway when this video comes out, and then we'll have to see how that goes. All right, so this week, it's in an area where it can recover, perhaps, and go on. The daily just had such a big move, a steeper correction makes more sense. In fact, a correction back down to 900 makes more sense. Or alternative, it drops down, finishes as a nice bullish candle off that, and closes above 1,000 would be a good sign for me. All right, so consolidation here on Spider, coming back down, closing near those lows, producing almost lower highs. That's actually looking weak. That looks like it wants to kind of break down, go a little bit lower. So I would need, in order to see that broken, I need to see these highs broken. And we'll have to see how that goes. But at this point, it's not really a position at this time. Finishing off on Vanguard. So Vanguard overall has been looking really nice. Nice healthy pullback to 400, continuation on, running out of steam where it is at the moment, but a really nice pullback and a bullish candle, bullish setup here to continue up. This also needs to have a bit of a deeper correction, but in isolation, looking relatively bullish. I want to see how this continues. That's a nice whole weekly candle again, breaking the low. That could indeed signal just a weekly deeper correction on the weekly. Okay, so now moving on to Treasuries. So I spoke last week about how we got this bullish injection, which we actually still have maintained. but just not on the US bonds. So this one is actually corrected again to the downside. Looks as though 130 is going to be its initial level for now. I'm a little bit surprised. Again, it's kind of, at this point in time, it's break of this low would see us head down to these lows. It's very difficult at this point in time to predict what it wants to do, because here it's just saying that it's literally sort of range bound with that. It could just as much this week break higher, go up here, but it is sort of confirming that there's 1 minute there's concerns of inflation, and the next minute there aren't really. Okay, so again, yes, if we see a deeper correction within the markets, this time next week, then there would be a bit of a bullish climb on this. It would be reasonable to expect that. What I think is interesting when I have a look at the Euro bubble, where the fears of inflation don't seem to be as bad, there is still this kind of maintain, this sort of push back up off these levels here. And I think it's relatively significant. I want to see if we can close a little bit higher. You can see we pull back here, bullish candle here. We need to break above these highs and ultimately close a little bit higher this coming week. That will then sort of support, again, wouldn't be surprised if we did see that across the equity, across the treasuries, I beg your pardon, across bonds. We would then subsequently see a bit of a deeper correction in the market. Okay, a bit of a bullish setup here. We can break these highs, continue up a little bit higher. There's no reason why the month couldn't ultimately finish a little bit stronger. That was a really big injection, but we haven't followed through. And that is my concern. We should have followed through. We haven't followed through on that. Okay, let's move on to cryptos. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We're hitting on 29 minutes, and I was hoping to not have it be so bad. Okay, so last week I was kind of neutral on cryptos, and then Monday, well, then actually, and it's Saturday now. So again, tomorrow or Sunday, tomorrow being Sunday, the whole story could shift again. But overall, I then changed my sentiment because we had such a strong bullish move out, broke up to these new highs, and then coming back down. What is worthwhile kind of noting here is the reaction at this, at this level. Although we just broke up above those old highs, we then immediately started to get pushed down. We've got that bearish divergence on both of those indicators, which still implies that there's quite a bit of weakness here. And so breaks of these lows or break below 60,000 to me would then signify we're going to see a move down to 50,000. Okay, that is just obviously a sign of pure exhaustion at that point. So really, what are we doing this week is seeing how in the early parts of the week, or I'll do it again tomorrow, we'll have a look and see, and if I have to update, I will. But this is a struggle. I would have expected to be able to close higher than it did. It seems to be closing towards the downside. So although I did say it was neutral, it attempted to break out and then got its ass kicked, which is the only other way to describe this, and now it's back where it is. Okay, so then having a look at Ethereum, for example, overall a little bit healthier. Also, back down into these lows, managing to break through this resistance, but then not really managing to finish much higher. Neo as well, breakout and a pullback. It's come into these previous market structures. Some buyers coming in here. Overall momentum looks healthy. I'd like to see, or would expect at this point, Neo has a good chance of taking another run to the upside. Cardano, on the other hand, complete rejection back down into these lows. And you can see, here, that failure on the weekly, and also Ripple. Also back down, at least into the previous market structures, and therefore I want to see if it just continues below that or buyers above it, and then it's just finished with Dogecoin. Very clearly also producing a downtrend on the daily and back into these lows, complete indecision weekly. So basically, just to recap, although I said last week that I was neutral, I wasn't expecting a breakout. There was a breakout, but it was actually a failed breakout, and all that really does is actually add to the fact that neutral was probably the way to go. In hindsight. Now, what I need to see actually to be convinced of that is to see that kind of weekly candle probably by the end of the week to close as a solid bullish candle by these highs, as opposed to just a single day kind of breaking a little bit higher or subsequent follow through on that. And again, it's Saturday now, the same thing could happen today, and tomorrow there could be a push a little bit higher. But actually at this point in time, I'll sort of go back to that. I do think that right now cryptos are, until further notice, until they start to consistently close a little bit higher like they have in the past, then I would expect, then I would add, I'll be looking at them with extreme caution from a trader's perspective, not expecting that much more from them. I need to see them commit a little bit to the higher side, because right now they're just acting a little bit on the crazy. They're just acting a little bit too crazy. If they were super strong, they would just be closing high. They're not. Keep coming back to the middle and potentially even looking like they might want to go a little bit lower. There we go. And on that note, ladies and gents, I want to wish you a wonderful week. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock here, and I will chat to you soon. Have a good one.